Hello and welcome to Enlightened Empaths, your community for the spiritually awakened, where we discuss, explore, and connect with fellow empaths, healers, intuitives, and seekers. Today we're going to talk about different ways you can expand and connect more deeply with your consciousness. And joining us to help us dive deep is Dr. Dain Heer, who's a best-selling author, speaker, and the founder of International Being You Day. Dain is also the co-creator of Access Consciousness, one of the world's largest personal development organizations. And he has helped tens of thousands of people around the world reconnect with who they truly are beyond judgment, trauma, and limitation. His unique approach combines energy work, emotional freedom tools, and radical kindness. He's been featured on Good Morning Washington, Maxim, GQ, Elephant Journal, and more. Dain, we're so happy to have you join us. Thank you for coming on Enlightened Empaths.
Oh, thanks for having me. It is a pleasure.
We're excited. Can you start us off by explaining what happened to you that day you found an article in your local newspaper that said, "All of life comes to me with ease, joy, and glory. Call Shannon"?
Yeah, my life was pain, suffering, and gory. I got so angry I threw the paper away. And but it's interesting. Anything that really is for you, the universe will find a way to put it in your face again. And so I was leafing through this paper. I was living in Santa Barbara, and I had gotten to a place a week or 2 weeks before that where I was like, I am done. I'm out of here. I'm a seeker, like the people that listen to your podcast. And I was reading every book I could. I was going to weekend workshops, filling up my credit card, using every tool I could find, and I was still unhappy. And at one point, I just had enough. I had what looked like the perfect relationship, and I was starting my second chiropractic practice. And on the outside, boy, did I look like I should be happy. On the inside, I was dying. And, part of the reason I started a spiritual journey in the first place, the biggest part was because I wanted to be happy. And I knew there were other things possible. So here I was, I'd literally set a date to end my life. And I come across this, all of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory. And I just wasn't having it. Well, the paper comes out once a week in Santa Barbara. And I was leafing through the paper the next week. And the only thing my eyes focus on is this tiny little classified ad toward the back of the paper that says, all of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory. And it said, call Shannon. And I called her and I said, what do you do? And she said, we do all kinds of stuff. It's called Access Consciousness. And maybe we start with this thing called the bars. At the best, your whole life can change. At the worst, you'll feel like you had a good massage. And in the back of my head, I was like, my whole life better change or I'm killing myself. What do I have to lose? Might as well try one more damn thing. So I did. And she comes over and we're talking, and I lie down on my massage table. She puts her hands on my head really lightly, and there's this sense of peace in my universe for the first time in literally years. And that sort of started transforming into a sense of joy. And all she was doing was putting her hands on my head really lightly. And at a certain point, I was giggling like a little kid during the session. And an hour and 15 minutes later, I got up and I was like, wow, has it always been this beautiful here? If it feels like this to be alive, I'm in. And this wasn't a mental process at all. There was no talking involved. It was something I got to viscerally experience. And for me to know that change was possible that fast, I was in. So here I am,
Wow.
25 years later.
That's absolutely an amazing story. And it speaks to how spirit is always trying to help us and talk to us. And they knew how to do that with that little ad that
Yeah.
ironically started with anger. This is why I always say people, anger is such a positive emotion when used correctly.
I love that point of view. And we can also talk a little more about that as we get into things, because it's our point of view that creates our reality. And if we'll go to question rather than conclusion, we can see the gift in everything. What if there's a beautiful energy underneath everything? And what if we can just ask, what's the beautiful energy underneath this? And while you're in the middle of the anger, you might not be willing to go there, but as it dissipates, see what it's showing you.
Exactly.
I love that you brought up that it came back into your life and showed up serendipitously, because we've said that to people for many years. If spirit wants you to do this or wants to get your attention, they'll keep bringing it back and keep bringing it back. You always have choice and free will to say, no, thank you. But at some point, it's going to resonate with your heart. And I'm grateful
Yeah.
you didn't choose to leave, because you're obviously helping a whole lot of people with your work. But I think right now your work is incredibly poignant, because so many people are struggling with connecting with that inner light, connecting with, how am I unique enough in this presence to be able to tap into that feeling of joy? So how do you help people realize they don't have to drink the Kool-Aid and conform to being like everyone else?
Oh, I love that question. And there are so many elements to it. But if we start by recognizing that we've grown up being taught how to judge, and anytime you judge anything, anytime you come up with a judgment, a decision, or a conclusion, nothing that doesn't match that can come into your world. And so in Access Consciousness, we have a definition of consciousness, which is where everything exists and nothing is judged. Judgment is one of the biggest killers of possibility there is, especially for empaths. And so there's two conversations. There's so many conversations, and my ADHD doesn't make that any easier. But let's say two conversations to start, which is, like, if you look at a baby, do they judge? No. Little kids don't judge. We don't fundamentally judge as a being. That is something we are taught. And the difficulty with that is the empaths of the world have a level of awareness and sensitivity to energetic awareness that if they did not have to conform to a reality of judgment, and therefore structure, and therefore solidity, and therefore exclusion of everything that doesn't match their miraculous magical awareness, they could use it to navigate their lives more successful than people who aren't empathic or who don't have those abilities. And so it's really, I see the empaths of the world as the X-Men. You know, in Access Consciousness, we talk about the people with ADD, ADHD, OCD, and autism as the mutation of the species to a higher order of function. But if you look at it, anybody who doesn't fit in the norm is judged. Now, and most of those judgments, especially for an empath, and I really want to emphasize this, most of those judgments are not verbal. A huge amount of them are, but most of them are the energetics of how we perceive the world. And if we can recognize that every single person on this planet, when they got here as a baby, their energetic feelers were out for, they're looking around going, wow, how do we do it here? As a being, there should be miraculous possibilities available. But then what do? You grow up around people, and people are so damn people-y, so interested in maintaining their certainty of their point of view by holding on to that point of view. Even when you show them, this person is here, they're suffering, and you can see the point of view of their suffering. You're like, here's why you're suffering. They're like, you're trying to make me wrong. It's like, no, you said you wanted to get over your suffering. I'm just showing you because I have this energetic awareness that's really strange that I don't know how to explain and don't know how to understand, and almost nobody is talking about, and is so weird and is so intense. Sometimes I feel like I want to crawl into a hole with no people in it and go away. That's all that's going on, is I have this awareness, but the person will fight for their limitation so they can maintain their certainty in their reality, and that's what we grew up around. But all of us grew up with this massive ability energetically to pick up on the world. And as you get older, you learn that that doesn't fit well with most parents and most families and most people and most structures. And so you learn to cut off everything that doesn't match, because your very being makes people uncomfortable when you don't judge. And so you learn to judge. And here's the other weird part is anything that we adopt that was not actually ours or actually us as a being, anything that we adopt, we put so much energy into going against our own knowing that we fight to the death for this structure that we then create as though it's us. And that's a huge part of what we're dealing with and trying to get people to know that they are a gift, is they've structured their entire lives that they are the anti-gift. And if they can just somehow get it right in this reality and just get somebody to see the gift they are, like actually get the gift, then they can be it. But people can't see the gift of a miraculous creature that doesn't fundamentally exist as a function of this reality. So, you beautiful empaths out there, you are a miracle. And what if now's the time to acknowledge it? And if that lightens you up at all, here's a tool for you. What's true for you always makes you lighter. A lie will always make you heavier. And so if I say that and part of you goes, oh, God, thank you, and as it would have for me if somebody would have had this conversation with me 25 years ago, it might not have been easy to hear that because I was in such self-judgment, but truth always resonates. And if we're willing, it will always get in. And if that's actually what's true, then how many lies have you bought about you not being a gift, not being a miracle, because you're so different? But if you look at the people that change the world, it's the different ones, not the people who do the same thing, who try to keep others in a box of judgment. It's the people who are willing to hold their heads up high and go, I do have something to contribute. I have no idea how to define it. I have no idea what it is, but I cannot stop myself from going there.
Yeah, that moment when you say, I can't not do this is so, so powerful. There's so much to unpack with everything you just said. First of all, Denise always uses that phrase, people are so people-y right now. And I think that fantastic. I remember years ago, I think it was Nietzsche, but I could be misquoting, but he said one of the worst things parents do is we teach our children names of things.
Mm.
So like, when a child is like, what's that? A tree? What's that? The sky? He says you should never do that because you're priming their subconscious to judge and label.
So true.
And I never really thought about that, but listening to you, it's so interesting how we are constantly being taught how to judge and label. Is part of accessing these deeper levels of consciousness about shedding those judgments, or is it about I don't know. I'm a big fan of before we just release and let go of falsehoods or trauma or shadow sides. I really feel like we have to look at them first,
Oh,
and
yeah.
acknowledge what they've done in our world and then let them go. So is that a part of access consciousness?
Yeah, absolutely. See, there's one of the ways we deal with trauma and one of the ways we deal with judgment and darkness and all of these things and the abuse we have experienced is by trying to avoid it, by trying to avoid that energy. And when we do, we literally physically affect our bodies to a greater or lesser degree, depending on how big it is from our point of view. And so one of the elements of what we have is something called a clearing statement that is one of the biggest upgrades in personal development since personal development has existed. And it works no matter what your technique, your philosophy, or anything. But what we'll invite people to do is ask a question like, okay, so we have a lot of tools. We have over 8,000 tools. And we keep expanding that toolbox as we find things that create change faster. And so one of the things about it is consciousness is total awareness with no judgment. So, a lot of us have stories of abuse from, light to heavy, like, less intense to more intense. And if you can look at that, one of the other elements that we talk about in Access is you are an infinite being. And we've probably heard that before, but we really you can't fathom infinite with your mind. So how do we use that practically? Well, if you recognize that on a practical level, is it possible that you're not here just to suffer this reality? Is it possible that you're here to live through this reality, to bring space to the places that don't have it, to actually bust apart the structures of the foundations of reality itself, so that we can all function from much more lightness and consciousness. Now, if your head exploded when I said that, or you just went blank, yeah, that's the space of it. And we need to acknowledge, especially as empaths, when we have the idea, oh, I just went blank, I must not be perceiving anything. Notice that it may be that you go blank when you're perceiving more than you can fathom. Okay, so this is another element of coming out of the wrongness. So it is about being present with everything that has occurred, while removing the element of judgment and the element of wrongness, because most of us that have experienced meanness, judgment, and abuse, I don't know one person on the planet that hasn't experienced it at some point. Okay, but once again, it tends to be the empaths and the sensitive people of the world, where they're the volume knob of a quote unquote normal, normal neural, whatever, is at 1. For an empath, their volume knob is up at 1,000. And so the person where the volume knob is at 1 doesn't understand it. Can't you just get over it? Yeah, they just said something mean to you. Who cares? Move on. You're like, I can't. It hurts so much. But what we can do is, in removing the element of judgment and removing the element of conclusion and removing the element of relevance, we can look at these things from a space of what we call allowance. Allowance is where everything is just an interesting point of view. And if you contrast that with the alignment and agreement, which is making something real, and the only time you resist and react is if you make something real. So in order to resist and react, which is the negative polarity, you have to have aligned and agreed. If you don't align and agree, there's no resistance and reaction to do. So if somebody says, you're a jerk, well, you have choice in that moment. But what we've learned is to align and agree with any point of view that's directed at us. And once again, so much of this is energetic for us as empaths. So somebody says you're a jerk, alignment and agreement is, oh my God, I'm a jerk. Okay. And then what we tend to do to try to get over it or get free from it is we do some version of, I'm not a jerk, you're a jerk. Or you don't know what you're looking at, or whatever, your mother wears funny clothes, whatever. Okay. So we try to overcome it in some way. But instead, if somebody goes, you're a jerk, and you're willing to not add the judgment element, the positive or negative polarity, they go, you're a jerk. And you go, oh, thank you. Or, oh, what makes you say that? Or, oh, you're probably right. Dear Lord, I'm a jerk so much more than I would like to acknowledge. You take the charge away, and you can do that with the clearing statement thing I was talking about. You can observe something that has occurred, but what we normally, the way we access it is by going with our current experience of something that's going on that we would like to change, or something else we would like to create, and then exploring the energetics of what seems to be in the way of that, or what seems to be keeping you from the possibility. And we uncover these stories that we've been telling ourselves. And then in that way, we can change it by undoing the resistance and reaction and the alignment and agreement that keeps it stuck in a particular way.
This is incredible, because I was a special ed teacher for many years. So I worked with a lot of people that were neurodivergent. But I love that brain chemistry, because they're the creators, the inventors, the problem solvers. And I personally think it's an evolutionary trait, but that's a story for another day. But what I was thinking about is you're almost teaching people how to reverse engineer how they've been programmed with messages, or when you were speaking about you're a jerk. And I always took that as a compliment when I was working with behaviorally challenged people, and they'd say, you're so weird. And I'd say, thank you. And they would be like, what? You're not supposed to react that way. But I feel like part of this is, how do we find it in ourselves or convince someone else to reverse that, to send it back to where it came from, so that they can start to foster the sense of self that was taken away? How do we take away that self-doubt in order to help people realize, one of my favorite things to say is that we're each an individual soul light. And if we can find the way that we're wired and the way that we connect with the divine, then we're going to be able to reach so much more than if we try to emulate someone else. And I feel like that's a lot of what you're saying in your work. But what would be some strategies or some tips for people that are trying to really fight that self-doubt?
First thing is a recognition that 98% of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions are things you're picking up from other people. Actually, 98% of your thoughts, feelings, emotions, and judgments. And there's a suggested way for dislodging that, which is for 3 days, ask, who does this belong to? For every thought, feeling, emotion, judgment, heaviness that you perceive energetically, because most of them are not verbal. And you go, who does this belong to? If it lightens up at all, it's not yours. You're aware of it somewhere in the world. And the thing about empaths is they're aware of the entire world. And that, by the way, once again, is a superpower if you can be shown how to use it as such, because what we've been doing is using it against us. And so who does this belong to? What'll happen is, let's say you're in the middle of anger or sadness or withdrawal, or in fact, all kinds of situations. Once again, especially for empaths, I keep referring to that because it's a different turned up level of energetic awareness. And so you'll be in a room with people and you may not have ever recognized it, but how much are you aware of every single thought, feeling, and emotion, judgment, and energetic point of view those people have? Pretty much all of them. So what'll happen is you'll be in, as a little kid, it'll be time to get up and read out loud, and you'll think you're freaking out. And I worked with a lady who was like, because in access classes, everybody is welcome to get to the microphone and ask a question. It's part of how the class moves, actually. And one lady was like, I'm so afraid of public speaking. I'm so afraid of talking to people. I went, cool. How old are you being? And she went, 7, 8, somewhere like that. And I went, okay, cool. What happened? She went, because when you can identify that, you can also identify the situation and the story that we put to it. So I said, okay, what happened? She's like, oh my God, it was time to read, and it was their first time reading out loud in front of everybody else. And I was freaking out. And I went, wait a minute, was that your freak out, or was everybody else freaked out and you were aware of it? And she went, oh my goodness, my best friend literally was terrified. I didn't have a problem until I talked to her and she was terrified. And then I was terrified. I was like, okay, so was it yours or did you buy it as yours? Oh my God. And literally she showed up in the next class, got to the microphone, totally different person. And this was in, a 5-minute facilitation for something that had been limiting her whole life. And so we have so many of these stories, and we've got to recognize it's the point of view we attach to it, which is often points of view that we bought from other people. And so the recognition that what if you're not as effed up as you think you are? Okay? Because a lot of us think we are because we're so different. But what I would like to see, and my target to create, is a world that embraces those of us that are neurodivergent and neuroplastic as hell, and actually create a world in which we are the creators of the world, not excluding anybody, but including everybody and including the difference and uniqueness of us. And so also in that, I also want to let everybody out there know, and I think you know this by listening to Samantha and Denise, you're not alone. There are a bunch of us weirdos out there. Oh, by the way, the original meaning of weird was of spirit, fate, or destiny. So when somebody says you're weird, do just like Denise and go, thank you, and watch their jaw drop. And
I love that. I love that definition. Wasn't it spelled like WYRD too? It was spelled differently. They switched it on us. What happens? I've met a lot of people, and sometimes it's me as well, where we've been labeled or judged as children. We know where it started. We know it's the grumpy dad or the emotionally distant or overcritical mom. And you work to heal that, but then you find that you've taken on some of that as your own truth.
yes.
Would the same strategy apply of getting to the root of, what age did this start?
It definitely can. So that idea of being able to change what's limiting us and follow the storyline and change these things is one of the elements of access. But there's a whole other element about the energetic exploration of miracles and miraculous possibilities. And I want to add that here because what I've found is we can spend the rest of our lives and eternity beyond that trying to find out why we're so screwed up. But the truth is we're not screwed up. That's why it's sticking us so much. And so as we start to explore our miraculousness, what'll happen, the way I don't know if there's a way, but one of the ideas I really like is get inspired by the miraculousness you would like to be. Start choosing to live. See, if we can choose to live as the people we would like to be, we will be those people. But it's only because we already are those people. But anyway, or beyond people, whatever you want to call us, weirdos. In Access, we call us humanoids. There's the humanoids that are the seekers, the ones with ADD, ADHD, OCD, autism, but also people who don't identify with any of that, but desire something greater that includes all of us. So there's the humanoids that are looking for something different, who look at this reality and go, if this is all there is, why am I here? And then there's the humans, and the human point of view is, what are you weirdos looking at? Why can't you just be happy doing the same job for 40 years, getting a plastic watch, retiring, and dying? And the humans function from judgment as a reality. Humanoids adopt judgment. And it literally, quite literally seems, and when I say literally, I take that with an unliteral grain of salt, but it literally, the functioning is as though they're two different species. Well, why have that conversation? Because when you're the humanoid in the group, you don't fit into a normal reality, but that's the gift of you. So if we can start it, and the way this seems to work, a lot of us have had inspiration at different times, or the suffering is so much we make a different demand, or both. And so as you head in that direction, see, your point of view creates your reality. Reality doesn't create your point of view. So let's say you go, oh, I would like total ease with money. Okay, cool. Done with the money struggle thing. So you start heading in that direction. You can sense things are changing just based on that request. Use whatever tools you have available to access that space as often as you possibly can. But eventually there's going to come a roadblock that you hit where either it seems like everything comes crashing down or you can't access that space and you feel a lot more contracted. Now we then go, okay, what is this? 4 great questions you can ask. What is this? What do I do with it? Can I change it? And if so, how do I change it? And in that case, then we have, once again, all kinds of tools, but in the what does it take to change it realm, something might be like, hey, how old are you being? Or what's going on here? Or another question, who am I being? And if I were truly being me, who would I be? And what those are about is accessing the space of your being beyond this you that you've been creating real so you can be an appropriate people. And so can I do a really quick thing in this regard? Use the
Sure.
clearing statement. Would that be okay? Okay, cool. And by the way, I'm going to use this thing called a clearing statement. And if any of you listening want to know what it is, go to theclearingstatement.com. Takes about 20 minutes. There's a short and a long video there. There's nothing for sale on that website. This is just a contribution to you guys. Okay. So let's do this. So how much of who, what, where, when, why, and how you are, what percentage of who, what, where, when, why, and how you are, and who, what, where, when, why, and how you are not, did you buy from your mother before the age of 2? How much of your mother's insecurity did you try to heal and change by taking it on, and it's now apparently yours? How much of her fear did you try to change, and the only thing you could think of doing was taking it on, and it now seems like yours? And what if it's okay to let it go now? And what if you could then be the contribution you always knew you were, because you're not saddling yourself with an entire world's problems, trying to change them through your body and your life? Everything that is, times a godzillion. Will you destroy and uncreate it all, please? Right and wrong, good and bad, pot and pock, all 100, shorts, boys, povads, bases, creations, and beyonds. So that's a clearing statement. And it's not something I often bring out in a podcast, probably for obvious reasons, but it's one of the most effective ways of, because what we're doing is we're asking the consciousness of us, the infinite being that's connected with all, the spirit within us, and that we are. Because, and regardless of what we call it, we have so many names for a similar idea, but that of us that actually is truly infinite and connected to all desires us to have the freedom to not choose to limit ourselves. And when we're holding on to what I'm trying to heal for mom and what I'm trying to heal for dad, two things. Number one, do they ever let it go and change? No. But if somebody, without asking you a question, without getting you to choose something different, is like, I'm taking away all your pain and suffering as I see it, because I think you'd be so much happier if you just didn't have all this stuff. So I'm just going to take it away from you. You'd be like, hell no, this is mine. Don't be taking me away from me. And that's what we're dealing with. So even on a logical level, we can recognize, but we didn't do any of this logically, or at least most of this. Most of this was energetic. Here we are. I'm a being. These people are suffering, or they're not as happy as they could be, or how the hell did I get here? Why am I not royalty? By the way, you probably don't want to be royalty. That's got a whole other bag of worms. But so energetically, you're like, well, okay. And you just do it almost automatically. So let's do the same thing with Father. What percentage of who, what, where, when, why, and how you are, who, what, where, when, why, and how you're not, who, what, where, when, why, and how you think you can be and cannot ever be, did you buy from your father before the age of 2? How much of his fear did you try to take away? How much of his insecurity? How much of his anger? How much of his sense of not really getting it, how to be here as a person, so faking it? Everything that is times a godzillion, which is a number so big only God knows. Will you destroy and uncreate it, please? Right and wrong, good and bad, pot and pock, all 100, shorts, boys, povads, bases, creations, and beyonds. And when I'm asking, will you destroy and uncreate, it's will you destroy this structure, the thing that puts a wall in front of you that you can't go around, or that puts a prison cell around you? And will you uncreate? And that request is, will you uncreate? Because we are the ones who are maintaining these walls around us. And then we're blaming the world, blaming other people. The place of true empowerment is recognizing, if I am functioning from a limitation, there is some choice I am making that is keeping that limitation in place. And the uncreate is about take your creative energy out of the limitation and put it into the creation of your life.
Wow, that's so impactful and powerful. Thank you for sharing that. I think sometimes just asking and reflecting on those questions begins the healing process as well, but I like the way you take it even further. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, my great pleasure.
This is an odd way to describe it, but it feels very much that you're giving people permission to find their voice and use it, but that takes a level of bravery and vulnerability in order to be able to access that tiny person that subdued themselves because of external or internal judgment. And I love the name of your book, by the way, Being You, Changing the World, because when you can step into that authenticity, that's when you can make the changes that cause a ripple effect. And I think we're being asked to do that right now with where the world is how can I be me in order a way to empower someone else to truly feel that they can be themselves. And it's going to counterbalance that need to conform or stay in the shell or hold our voice. So could you talk a bit about your upcoming event that you started? Because we would love, love, love to hear about your Being You Day.
I would love to. It's called International Being You Day, and I created it along with a group of other wonderful weirdos that I'm so blessed to work with, to inspire people to the awareness that being you is actually the funnest, the most creative, the space where you give no more point of view to judgment or limitation, And it's the thing that will actually make your life work and create the most for all of us. And it's the easiest thing we can choose. And yet it seems like the most difficult because of everything that we've been speaking about and all kinds of other things. And so it's a day of celebrating us. It's a day of getting inspired. It's a day of connecting with other weirdos and not having to, like, you can connect online, or if you're in Mexico, you can come there. It's June 22nd, and we're having a live event too. But unlike, I don't know about anybody else, but let me tell you, for me, I used to hate being in groups of people. Like, somebody's like, hey, do you want to go to anything that has more than one person? No. Like, do you want to go to a concert? Are there still people at those things? No. Or an event, especially like something like a quote unquote spiritual or metaphysical or conscious event. Because here's the thing, and I'm going to say this only to acknowledge those of you who have had awarenesses and you didn't know what they were. You probably thought it was you. But in places like any place that there's a lot of people, there tends to be an appropriate way people are supposed to function. And of necessity, that creates a structure of judgment that they're functioning from. And what you'll see in groups a lot of times is their personalities show up and their being show up far less. Well, we're turning that crap on its ear. Come as you are. Be acknowledged as a gift that you are. I'm doing a free class. I think it's a 2-hour class that day, which is all about, well, like a lot of the things that we've done today, but furtherance of that, because we have more time and people who will be joining from around the world. So it's time to come and play and celebrate you and go away feeling awesome.
I love that. We need more of that. We need to always celebrate being ourselves, because without ourselves, what else is there? We are a universe of one in many ways, if you believe in the collective unconscious, which, I do. There's a quote by Dr. Seuss I love where he says, you have to be odd to be number one. So we need to embrace our weirdness and all of that. So do you have other events coming up, though? Do you want to talk about some of,
so many?
Yeah, I went to your website and I was like, well, I'll just ask him if he wants us to mention one or two of these.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Actually, there's a class called Being You, Changing the World that's coming up that you can join. It's at an especially good time for the Americas. I'll be doing it from Argentina in English, just to be clear. And we'll also have many languages translated simultaneously as we do. But that class is a 3-day exploration that you have no idea what happens over 3 days. None of us does, but all of us start to thrive and shine. And the reason I created the class is because I wrote the book, Being You, Changing the World. It came out in 2011. And we thought, hey, let's put a class together, to celebrate the book. And it was the first time I'd ever done that class. And I do a lot of energetic stuff in class anyway, it creates a space for something that is just, I love it. It's amazing to see people go from having them sort of like, their little heads are down and their eyes are kind of closed because that's the way they learn to live in this reality. So they're not too much. And over 3 days, they come alive. And what happened with this particular class was I saw that to a degree that I never had before with any class I'd facilitated. And then I would see people from the class 6 months later, and that change had exponentialized. And I was like, this is something I've looked for my whole life. Because how often do you go to a weekend workshop, you get this massive change, and by Wednesday of the following week, you feel like you lost it all? This had the exact opposite effect. So that's why 14, 15 years later, I'm still facilitating that class, and each one is different every time. But it's a 3-day exploration of how friggin' awesome you are, but also how to live it in the trenches of life.
Yeah. And how to take it home with you.
That.
Yeah,
exactly.
that's so important. I like that you mentioned that. What are some things anyone listening could do now? And could you leave us with like an energetic technique people could do now that you recommend?
I got a few really easy tools. Okay, one is the thing, we actually call it the mantra of access, though we don't go around doing mantras. It's all of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory. All of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory. All of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory. And you want to say that 10 times in the morning, 10 times in the evening. But my suggestion is to say it all day long. And what this is different than an affirmation. Because with affirmations, see, your point of view creates your reality. Reality does not create your point of view. So if you think something is difficult, it shows up as difficult, whereas somebody next to you, they don't have that point of view, so it shows up with ease. Well, what this is about is, and most affirmations are people trying to overcome their negative point of view with a positive point of view. This is about letting it all exist, but coming with ease and joy. And glory is exuberant expression and abundance. That's the original meaning of glory. So when you're saying all of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory, what you're doing is an acknowledgement and a request of the universe and you and us to have the good, the bad, and the ugly show up with ease and joy and glory. Now, this is a tool that I got 25 years ago, and I used it. You know, when you get a tool and you use it because it's new and you use it and you see how it changes and you use it. And I'd sort of let it slip over the last, I don't know, 2 decades. Like I used it, but hardly at all. And I recently rediscovered this particular tool, and I have been using it. And part of the reason I stopped telling people about it was because I could hear in people's heads, they're like, this couldn't possibly work. This is too easy. Do me a favor, try this. Try taking the next 2 or 3 days and maybe write it as a screensaver, write it on a piece of paper, write it on, your boyfriend's forehead or whatever it is, and say it as many times as you have it come into your head to say, and see if it doesn't change the way things show up. Because what it starts changing is you'll go to the store and you'll find a parking spot, which, oh, cool. You go into the store and you'll find the line that has the fewest people, and they'll have the thing you want on sale. And what's funny is also, for anybody who's been on a spiritual journey, those things were like, oh my God, that's like not significantly spiritual enough. How is that the universe talking to me and through me? I'm like, here's the way it actually works. When we can have all of the things in life come to us with ease and joy and exuberant expression and abundance, that is the quality for happiness that we've been missing. And when we can then be grateful for it, that will, of course, expand it. But also, if we've been on any form of spiritual journey at all, we've been totally negating and neglecting the gift of that in the living of what we call our mundane lives. And that's why we have mundane lives instead of miraculous lives, because we're going, oh, I'm spiritual here, I'm conscious here, I'm miraculous here. Oh, and then I got to deal with the laundry. It's like, what if the laundry came to you with ease, joy, and glory? And it sounds almost ridiculous to say, especially if you've done a lot of work and been doing a lot of things and exploring the miracles of the universe. But your life is a miracle of the universe when you're truly living. And that, more than anything else, creates us as a source of lightness for the world. Us enjoying our lives does more than anything else to create us as a source of lightness for our world. And us enjoying our lives and having more periods of lightness adds more lightness to our world. Sorry, I'm on a bit of a soapbox here, but you'll start to see as you choose more of that, the people around you will start knowing it's possible for them too. And how much have we wanted everybody around us to be happy? And we thought the way to do that was to take away their suffering or judge them for their suffering or judge them for what they're doing that's creating their suffering, as though that will make them change their suffering, which never works. It adds to more judgment and suffering. But us living as lightness, oh my goodness, it changes everything around us. It's so cool. And also in that space, it's so much easier to perceive and receive miracles from lightness than it is from heaviness. Judgment excludes miracles. Gratitude, lightness, sensing or asking for possibilities and asking for all of life to come to you with ease, joy, and glory invites miracles. And so really it becomes our choice and our ability to choose and create.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, our word is our wand and our thoughts are our echo. And so that's a great way to have the universe echo ease, joy, and glory back to us. I love it.
And it's making the most of your turn. Are you wasting your turn, or are you trudging through? And I know there are times in everyone's lives where they have to trudge. It's part of the game. We trudge, but we get on the other side of it. And I think that's one of the reasons what you were speaking about earlier is people wanting more time to themselves. It's much easier to be goofy and silly and light when you're not perceiving other people's energy or input. So I think we kind of become this protective little, I'm going to dance through the woods with the dogs and laugh and have fun because there's no one judging me. There's no one saying that my way is wrong. So everything that you're saying is so beautiful for a community. And thank you for the work you're doing, because this is so desperately needed during these times.
Thank you so much.
Amazing.
And thank you. And may I say the same to you both. I am so grateful for what you are doing that is contributing to all of us. And, this is us. Let's play.
Yes, let's each turn on our lights and see what we can create. Denise, when you were talking about how you see everyone as a little point of light, I kept seeing my old light bright from childhood.
Yes. Yes. And I'll say that to somebody. Take your little light bag, just plug it right into the collector.
Plug it in. Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for coming on, Dain. This has been really, really thought-provoking, and I'm so excited for anyone listening who hasn't heard of you to introduce you to all of them, and I want everyone to check out your work. Once again, guys, you can go to his website, drdainheer.com. That's DAINHEER.com. Or you can also go to beingyouday.com and celebrate the beauty of you on June 22nd. Remember, as always, empaths, to show up, do great work, and shine your light.